Welcome back to the show, Mr. Duncan Craig OBE.
Thank you very much.
Founder and CEO of We Are Survivors, a psychotherapist in his own right, and also a lot of interesting and exciting things, I believe. Speaking of interesting and exciting things, it's been quite a year.
It certainly has, yeah. We have to say happy birthday to us. Happy 17th
Happy
birthday
17th
to
birthday.
us.
We're getting older now. 16th, we talked about you can legally buy scrap metal, substantial meal at the pub.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can have, there was another thing, having sex.
Do it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then 17, I think you can, something about a motorbike, a moped,
Yeah,
or something.
probably something like that. Maybe you can look more acceptable with an ear piercing.
Yeah, possibly.
That's what I told myself.
Yeah.
I got a different haircut, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, you're right. This time last year, we were talking about becoming 16 and the year of consent, which, has been a real roller coaster.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think this time last year, I don't think I would have said everything that's happened has happened.
No.
Little p politics, big P politics in the world. And also for us as an organisation as well. So, yeah, let's
talk about
explore it.
Yeah. I think something I asked you just before we hit that record button is, do you think we did this to ourselves? So you mentioned there's been a bit of a roller coaster. There's been ups, downs, a lot of changes. Do you think by calling this the year of consent and drawing attention to it, it's almost like we've invited a lot of change or reflection as an organisation?
Yeah, I do. I also think there's something about maybe there's an unconscious thing that kind of goes on within our collective hive mind within the organisation, and there was something about change.
Yeah.
So we've said goodbye to some colleagues and we've said hello to other colleagues. We've really, I don't know, I'm trying not to say I think we've matured, because a 17-year-old boy should still be able to be.
I mean, I thought I was mature when I was 17, but not really.
But yeah, I think there's an element of there's something's changed. Something changed actually from kind of Christmas, New Year, maybe slightly before Christmas, New Year, but just in that period. And as we came to the end of 16, something changed, which I think is about kind of acceptance. Sure. I think there's certainly something about there's a greater acceptance that we can influence some things and not influence other things.
Yeah. So are you talking, is this the big P politics or the small P politics here?
Both, I think. Yeah. So just before Christmas, after
months of anxiously waiting.
Yeah. Well, I think actually it's about 7 months, so it's more than half a year.
Yeah.
The Tackling Violence Against Women and Girls strategy was announced. And as anyone that knows us well enough knows that we have consistently for years scratched our heads wondering, why are men and boys in a violence against women and girls strategy?
Yeah.
I, as a survivor, I don't think I consented to that.
No.
I don't think I consented to the idea that I would be seen as not a survivor in my own right, but I'd be seen as a victim of violence against women and girls.
Yeah. I grapple with it on a daily basis because I'm a victim, I'm a survivor of female perpetrated violence. And it brings me back to an uncomfortable position where you've seen me speak publicly before.
Sure.
Before a word comes out of my mouth, not only do I want to acknowledge, understandably, that there are huge issues for women and girls.
Absolutely.
Disproportionately huge issues.
Absolutely.
But I have to say that, and I have to cage that, and I have to kind of bring that out to the audience before I talk about my own experiences.
Yeah, like we have to caveat in some way our experiences. And so, I was really hoping that we would, the new Violence Against Women and Girls strategy would help us in some way move beyond that. Yeah. And I'm not too sure it has. But what I will say is I think there is much more of a recognition
100%
of boys and men as victims of sexual harms never consented to be being called victims of violence against women and girls. And so there was another part of the strategy that was called an
explanatory note.
Explanatory. I can't even say it.
In an earlier episode this season, we called it the mansplaining note, which has a certain ring to it. But the explanatory note, the sort of it at surface level, that makes it seem like a post-it someone stuck on the back. Yeah. But it's fairly robust. It does cover a lot.
Yeah. It always felt to me like, and as I've kind of got more used to it, it really does feel like this. It feels like it's a separate strategy by stealth.
Yes.
And I'm all right with that.
Yep.
I was involved with it in its creation during our year of consent, a number of roundtables with various different ministers. And, when it came out, I was a bit like, okay, I don't hate it.
No.
And so, like, picking into it all now, I've kind of arrived now at that stage where I think it's the best that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And so I certainly consent to that.
Yep.
But I think we've got I think we've got more work to do. We've got a longer journey to take.
Certainly.
And I think that is certainly, for me, one of the key points that comes out about our year of consent. I think at the very beginning, I was thinking of this kind of very neat beginning, middle, and end.
Yep.
And ironically, a bit like consent doesn't have
it doesn't arrive when you wanted it to.
Like this neat thing that actually, as much as consent is neat in a yes and no way, getting to that
the
point
space in between
absolutely is messy. It involves collaboration. It involves navigation, and so that's what the year of consent has been for me. Yeah, it's been this navigation to get from one status to another status. First of all, I'm going to try this without crying. First of all, kind of how do we engage our lads in prison?
Yes.
That was a big question that was posed to me at the very, very beginning of the year. And I didn't know. And then Matt, one of our amazing outspoken managers, came up with this idea of going around our prison service. We have 15 prisons
across the Northwest,
and speaking to individuals who are engaged in the service to kind of ask the question, what does consent mean for you? And from that, a whole load of words and pictures and conversations start, not just around consent in terms of sex, but consent in terms of like, what am I agreeing to? And that's in rehabilitation. That's a really big conversation.
100%. So much of the process is something that's done to you and not always done for you.
Very much. But having those conversations while somebody's in
literally
prison,
there against their will, but has come to this conversation and said, actually, I consent to this.
And you literally have to ask to go for a shower. You are told when to shit in some respects. So that's been really interesting. And what came out of that was just the most incredible piece of artwork by one of the lads in prison who is now out of prison.
Oh, thank God!
And is engaged in services. And there's this really beautiful story for him, which starts off with him being involved in the creation of the artwork, but then kind of that was a big thing because then he had to reveal himself effectively as being the person in the prison who's doing this work. And therefore, well, why were you chosen to do this work? Well, I was part of the service. And so he's kind of revealing something about himself.
Layers that had been put in place to protect guys for a long time is a reason why within the prisons, we've done an episode talking about this, we're called outside outspoken. There's no great flag that lands on someone's head that says survivor. We don't want to make anyone different in a space like that. And so as part of that project, to have to step back and say, well, this is me. While going on his own journey, I just...
and then so he creates this piece of artwork, which is phenomenal. He's taking all of the words that many of the other lads wrote, and he turned it into this huge canvas, which anybody that comes into the therapy space in our hub, please come and see it, because it's stunning. It's beautiful. And then he's now, because he's out of prison, he's now engaged in Outside Outspoken. And just before Christmas, Luke and Jardel from the Outside Outspoken team supported him to move into his first flat.
Amazing.
So there's this real kind of end to end and and onwards, which is stunning.
It's interesting just looking at one person's journey through this year in microcosm.
And so that all of those words being poured into how do you capture it? Well, why not do a book? So, that's been a real highlight. And I said, I have to talk about this without crying.
Yeah, sure.
Literally, because when you read those words, they are so heartfelt and they are so... I think they're some of the most important words that I've ever read, because they're from people who we often don't engage in conversation about consent. We often tell them that they have to ask for consent, absolutely. But we never say anything to them about consent is something that you have too. We never say that consent is a right of yours to be able to give or withdraw. Or withdraw, So that's been, a big highlight. We have obviously had the Consent Conversations film, the untitled film about consent, which I just think is so beautiful. I've shown when I started showing it people when it was still in that slight pre-production stage. And I was saying, what do you think? So many people said it's beautiful, and that's the word that I thought of right at the beginning, because
consent has to be beautiful.
But I think there's something so special about the beauty of just these conversations. It really is. So that's a massive highlight. The launch of our new strategy, Ambition 2030.
How do we get what our place is?
How do we get from here to there? And also, where is there?
What is the target? What is the audience? What is it we're trying to set ourselves out to achieve?
What do you think about Year of Consent?
What do I think about the Year of Consent? The Year of Consent for me has been the year that we've looked for more voices that we hadn't found before. So for me, I talk about the successes of the Spoke project. So really literally reaching outside of Manchester in a wider way. Our audience has always been survivors. It's never been Manchester. As soon as you stopped being Survivors Manchester, it's basically a challenge set to yourself to say, well, we are survivors and there's survivors everywhere, so why aren't we everywhere? So moving just outside of the city, because there's so much to be said about what this city holds in terms of its memories for people.
Very much so.
A lot of people can't go down a certain street, don't want to be in a certain area, don't want to be around their family. Some are the opposite and they're happy to travel in, but literally putting places on the map every single day of the week. We're in Stockport, we're in Wigan, we're in Rochdale, we're in so on and so forth. To know that someone has a safe hub outside of the city centre that can be their journey into support, having that therapy there, having the ISVA support there, getting that community going. I think that to me is really important.
And their loved ones as well.
And their loved ones. That's it. There's nothing happens without them. And, I mentioned briefly in an earlier episode with our own Michael, who of course was our Nightingale navigator for a long period of time, that without my own supporters, this journey never started for me.
Of course.
It just wouldn't begin.
Of course.
You know, I spent 1 year in silence.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest year of my life. But statistically, it should have been about 20, 25.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think there's something, mixing in with consent, I think there's something really quite beautiful about the Nightingale Project, which is, and I have to thank the Deputy Mayor for supporting us to kind of think it through. Yeah. But something really beautiful about the lads have consented for their loved ones to be here.
Yes. Yes.
There's something so lovely about that. And, in some way, what we had previously done, and I'm just not too sure organisations think this through, but we'd previously kind of said to, I don't know, the wife of the lad that we're working with, like, this is obviously going to impact you. If you've got anything, just give us a call. And so he's got his ISVA, and that should be like really protected.
Yes.
But then we also said to his wife, if you want to, just contact the ISVA. And I don't know, there was something that always didn't sit right with me about that, but I didn't know what it was until somebody kind of said, as much as I love my wife, I don't want her to be speaking to my ISVA. That's mine. And I was like, oh my God,
that's it.
That's that thing. Yeah. And so now, by kind of saying, well, we've got this new person and this new service in the same space, it's just at a different time, etc. It's kind of like the survivor saying to his wife, his girlfriend, his boyfriend, his husband, his best mate, his family, I mean, they're for you. It's not what I do, it's for you.
That's your one.
And that feels like really exciting. And we're still very early on in our journey that way, but there's lots of things in that sort of 16th year that I think have really set a foundation for where we're going to go and who we are going to be as we get closer to becoming a fully grown man.
We're almost a man.
A fully grown
We're 17, man. Teachers will let you get away with having a moustache.
Yeah.
Like a small, not a full moustache, but like a bit of a moustache.
Yeah.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Practically
there. But yet there's a whole other year to learn and grow and kind of reflect back.
Yeah.
Is there anything you feel like during the year of consent that we can kind of take forward that has to be part of our 17th year as well? Something that we've not quite achieved, but we need to not let slip away from us?
Yeah, definitely. So I think we're certainly not as far on as I hope we would be.
Sure.
In respect of, what do we do about young people? What do we do about those young people who are trying to navigate consent?
Yep.
How do we tap into the spaces that they're talking? That's the big... Yes, of course, there's also the thing about, what do we do about teenagers who have experienced abuse, and do we have therapy services? Do we have ISVA services? All of that to one side for a second, because that's all being talked about at the moment, and we're trying to work.
It's an ongoing conversation. Yeah.
The bit that I'm really interested in is how do we stop survivors from becoming survivors in the first place?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like for me, there's a lot that is talked about in the men's explanatory note, the mansplaining note, about what you can do yourself as a survivor, trying to put in a bit more robust understanding about, male gender roles or what support is out there or how to reach out. I think that's good. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And it's something I would have benefited from. But certainly I feel like, you had the expression about the frog in hot water.
Yeah.
When the water just slowly gets warmer, the frog's in there, doesn't notice. I feel like people are out there and equipped enough that when they are the frog that jumps into the hot water, there are now services for them. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
But when you're in the hot water yourself, there's such a role of others, be it, teachers, parents, or friends, to be able to say, hey, do you know you're being groomed?
Yeah.
Hey, how can I help you? What's the rope I can throw to you?
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. And I think, with, we were deeply connected to Baby Reindeer and, everything that kind of happened for us as an organisation with Rich, was so important. Yeah. And then, in the Year of Consent, we did Casualty.
Yes.
And we also...
It's Probably Come as well.
Probably Come, yep. Absolutely. And then we also lent into Hollyoaks again. And I remember would have been October, I think it was, when that hit the screens on the Hollyoaks later. It was fascinating. Mm-hmm. Fascinating because 15 years ago, we had the first male rape victim on our television screens pre-Watershed, when James, who obviously is one of our ambassadors, when James was playing John Paul McQueen on Hollyoaks, and John Paul was raped. And I remember the social media was in a lot more of its infancy than it is now. But I remember the conversations that people were having on social media about how, this doesn't happen to men, etc., etc. This time, when Danny and Lewis, who are playing Dodger and Donny, I have to remember these characters. For every one person that I'm dealing with, there's two characters to them.
It's not fair.
So no. Donny and Dodger, when they experienced rape, it was very different because the conversations felt like lots of people were policing other people. So when John Paul was raped, you had people like me and other professionals saying, well, actually, it does happen. This time, 15 years later, you've got people saying, of course it does, of course it happens to men. And then, lots of conversations going, yeah. And then, Probably Come was really interesting because that was the first time that we'd done anything with a non-English speaking television show or community. And I just think there's something fascinating about that, because Mark, who played Matthew, who's now one of our ambassadors as well. Mark and I have had loads of conversations about even something like the language, like literal translation. Some things don't literally translate. And so you kind of, sometimes you lose the sense of the meaning.
The essence.
But actually, with some Welsh words, you get a greater pregnancy of the meaning. And so there is something as well about something really interesting in that, about consent, in terms of how do you talk about something when language is different but meaning needs to be the same. And so that's been fascinating. That's been really interesting. And also we're potentially talking to quite a different community,
quite literally
kind of a rural community
that's never been spoken to in their own language before.
No. And it was stunning. I still remember being in Cardiff, and I'd gone over to the studios, and they have like a viewing room. And there was me and Mark sat on one sofa, and then on another sofa there was the director and the writer and the producer and other people, and we sort of sat there, and I think I was just like stone. I was just so still, just watching, and it finished, and I just had tears rolling down my face, and I just looked at Mark and I just said, that was incredible. And he just threw his arms around me, and I think we sat hugging on that sofa for about an hour, both of us in absolute tears. And I still say this about the team at Probably Come. That episode is so cinematic. It's yes, of course, it's part of a series.
Yeah, sure. But it's individual importance.
On its own, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And I think the year of consent has been us having conversations in different spaces about consent and about not just what happens to you when you experience things that are not consensual, but more importantly, how do we just talk about the subject of consent?
That's it. It's really, really interesting when these conversations coming up, seeing how people react, because consent is something that we should all hopefully be experiencing in our daily lives. It's, simple interactions, but it's the fact that it remains so taboo to have consent be something that is unspoken and undiscussable in polite society, whatever that looks like.
I think one of the things that I'm still hopeful for talking to young people, particularly boys in schools, about things like misogyny and consent and stuff. And I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in, okay, how are you going to speak? If you're going to speak to young people about consent in schools, okay, that's going to involve us having to have proper conversations about sex.
Yeah, just in general.
It's going to have conversations about relationships. I really hope we're not just going to have some quite conservative, basic, binary, standard kind of, this is a man, this is a woman, this is relationships. I hope we don't do that. I hope we do something that is much more emotional. I want to talk about emotional language. I don't want to just talk about the wham bam thank you ma'am kind of thing. I want to talk about all the other stuff that goes with it that I think makes consent like complex. I also want to make sure that we're talking about all men, all women, all males, all females, trans and non-binary people. Like if there's a group of people in our year of consent that have had probably the worst time, where they have not consented for so much happening to them, it's them. And I and our board stand firm in the fact that we will always welcome, we will always keep our door open for trans and non-binary survivors without a shadow of a doubt. But there is something about how do we begin to have those conversations? Because if schools are going to do this, it's tricky and we're going to have to be a little bit more grown up.
100%.
Here's the thing though, I don't think when I say we have to be more grown up, I'm not talking about the young people.
No.
I'm talking about the adults.
They're fine. It's the adults who are willing to dance. These conversations are coming and facing children at an earlier age, generation upon generation. We look at the disproportionate numbers of young boys, 91% of those captured who have experienced online sextortion. This is something that is very, very commonplace. The language around sexting, image sharing, what we call child sexual abuse material shared by other children with each other. We're still not ready to talk about everything that happened during COVID and the general language and dynamics that have moved into place. I need to feel confident that the person going into those schools and having that conversation is willing to treat children a bit more like adults. And they themselves is willing to be a little bit less of an adult.
I mean, I do think, I say the same thing as what you've just said there. Can we start treating these young people more like adults?
More like people.
and that's the thing. I don't want young people and children to be treated like adults. I want them to be respected enough as people for us to understand that actually there is so much because of, it's a bit boring to blame it on the internet. However, the internet and social media, and it has brought information to us quicker in a way that sometimes I'm not really comfortable.
The law is chasing behind the current speed of development.
So far behind.
We're asking whether we can before knowing whether we should and knowing the full impact of it. Especially around image-based abuse and AI.
Without a doubt. And so I want us to think more about children and young people having had access to stuff already. And so it's not about, for me, it's not about, how do we speak to them more like adults. It's about how do we begin to have more mature conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that feels really important.
Don't speak to them like adults. Adults don't speak to adults very good. We need to start talking to each other like people, actually conversing on these issues more generally. Looking forward now about what may come and what will come, what are we excited about?
So I think, the one thing that in our 16th year we started doing with consent from partners, etc., was we began to talk about the people nobody wants to talk about, which is those survivors who have also committed sexual offences. We know that it's only about 3%, so it's a tiny, tiny minority. And as controversial as this can be, and it is controversial in a social media age, there's something for me as a survivor. I truly believe that they're still survivors. We still need to find something. And so we started talking about that in our 16th year. We started talking openly about the project that we have, the We Are Listening project, separate to the building, separate to the hub, in other spaces. And so 17 is going to be more of that. I want it to be bigger. I want it to start including a phenomena that we have seen a little bit more of, which is survivors who have gone looking for the material that was about them. So we're seeing a couple of cases where young people have, like you say, 91%. Internet Watch Foundation showed 91%.
So they've inadvertently accessed.
They've gone looking for not material of others. They've gone looking for the material of them, and then we, as a society, have treated them like they are dangerous. And I really want to get underneath that, because that bothers me significantly. So we need to get underneath that. I think we've also kind of got to think more geographically. And also that isn't just place-based. That isn't just literally physical locations. I think we've got to think more, not just, do we have a website? Can we get email? Are we on social media? How are people in a post-COVID world? How are they engaging with online spaces? How do we support people to engage in online spaces, in safe online spaces?
That's it.
What services do we offer in safe online spaces? So that's a kind of a thing. I think, we are still in this stuck space of a criminal justice system that is, sometimes I want to not say at breaking point, because
you feel like it's broken already.
There's a bit of me that goes, how many times for how many years can we say it's at breaking point? So we've still got to find ways through that. And I think this year more than ever, I think it's going to take us right to the point where maybe we start admitting as a society that it's broken. I am hopeful of funding. So we can expand into more spaces.
The need that's always been there.
Absolutely. We're one of 4 or 5 organisations across the country working specifically with males. I want us to take a bit more of a step forward in talking to young people about what do young people want. I think that's really important. This is my 50th year of living, which terrifies me.
You've got your own milestone to think about then as well. It's like, what's the mark I'm going to leave this year?
What I definitely know, having employed quite a lot of young people, is that
I'm getting younger. This beard I've got, for those enjoying the visual element of this podcast, this is what we call a struggle beard. It will go away at some point, but I am still relatively young.
Well, I am not anymore, and so I want to be asking young people, what do you want?
Yeah, of course.
That feels really important.
You can't just guess.
And we in the latter end of 2025, we thought more about policy and influencing.
Yeah,
we had 16 years worth of data, of knowledge, so how do we begin to spread that out?
Yep.
Yeah, what do we just put out into the world for the kind of for anyone to get?
We've always been experts by experience, and that expertise has sat guarded.
Yeah.
How do we use it?
Yeah. And so Rory, our senior information and policy officer, Rory's kind of carved a really niche sort of space for himself. And I mean, it's just grown and grown and grown and grown. And so it's 17, 18, 19, 20. I want that to be part of our gift to the world. Because I think what's really sad about our sector, the voluntary sector, I don't just mean the sexual harm sector.
No,
I mean the
much broader.
Sector, is we are so terrible at what is known as corporate memory.
Yeah.
So somebody leaves an organisation and they take a whole load of information with them. And I am not ready to leave yet, but I don't want to get to a point where we've lost the corporate memory of the organisation, because there's so much to learn. And one of my hopes for 17 is that we can actually get the investment to archive. So we've got everything over 16 years now. And I want to archive it properly. Yeah. I want it to be a reference library.
You want to preserve it.
I want to loan it to the library for, the next 100 years or whatever. Yeah. And for it to be a real, the first 16 years capture of an organisation, but also 16 years of male survivorship. Yeah. And in our 17th year, I want to get to the end of 17 and then be able to say, as we step into our 18th year, here's the archive.
There it is on the shelf. Yeah. No, certainly. There's a lot to be said about preserving living memory and about how we use those experiences to influence others. And I think there's no better example of that. The project that's been on my lips and everyone else's at the moment is Loud Voices.
Yeah. And oral history is something that I learned about when I was press and marketing at the People's History Museum.
Oh, yeah.
I have an arts background. That's where I kind of come from. And stepping into working in museums and capturing stories. Yes. And these two exhibitions that I remember the most from my time at the museum, Moving Lives and Moving Stories. So Moving Lives was about the migration of West Indian people on Windrush. Yes. And Moving Stories was about the South Asian migration post partition. Yeah. And there was like different ways of capturing it. So Moving Stories was very much a visual capture where you go into the exhibition, you see the pictures and you listen to the stories of the pictures. Whereas Moving Lives was much more interactive. And there was a bit where we had like, I don't know if you're too young for this.
You're going to out my age.
You go into kind of like the hairdressers and they have those big hair.
Oh, yeah.
Like hair dryers.
Sure.
And we wired up some speakers. And
so it's just an immersive experience.
You sat in a little part of the gallery that looked like a hairdresser's. Yeah. And you listened to these three Jamaican women talking about when they arrived here on Windrush, the first thing that they did was they set up their own hairdressers because, nobody knew how to do hair. Their hair, absolutely. Yeah. And that's always stuck with me and kind of going a little bit back, not necessarily working in the arts, but from my community, from LGBT community, I'm of a generation that, we lost far too many friends and loved ones.
Lives went out.
Yeah, during the sort of the AIDS epidemic, and there was a beautiful idea of the quilt, the AIDS quilt, as now internationally it's so well known. And during our 16th year, our friends over at George House Trust, they had their 40th year. And they kind of did the same thing. They captured their first 40 years and the kind of the beginning of George House Trust. And they archived it. They had an exhibition. And part of their legacy is they came to help us with this thing called Loud Voices.
Yeah.
Loud Voices has been something we've been doing for ages, but we've just never called it anything.
There you go. It's like the year of consent. You call it something, you draw attention to it, and it drives us to focus on it.
Yeah, and so the model of it came out of George House Trust and Positive Speakers,
which is the best name for anything ever.
It's amazing, and if you ever get the opportunity to go hear Positive Speakers, they're phenomenal. And so Positive Speakers are people who are living positively with HIV, and they go to conferences, WIs, Rotary clubs, etc., and just talk about their experience. And I've had the absolute pleasure, honour of hearing many positive speakers over the years, particularly at kind of candlelit vigils and stuff. And Paul Fairweather, who is one of the people who was one of the co-founders of George House Trust back in the day. He created this project, Positive Speakers, and kind of like came up with a bit of a training plan. And
it was really organic.
Yeah, and so we said, how amazing would it be we always used to talk about break the silence, and yes, of course we still do.
Sure.
But how do we work with silence broken?
Yeah.
And so spoke to a couple of colleagues, spoke to George House Trust, spoke to Paul, and said, is it possible for you to come and do some work with us? And got a load of us together. Yeah. And you and I as two loud voices.
On our very own lived experience lead, Christopher.
Yeah.
Loud Voices is named after him because he's very loud.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But he's the perfect man for the job. Brought us all together and we talked and we shared.
And how amazing was it for when after we'd done the training, we had to do our trial run. How amazing was it to be in that room?
It was just incredible. I couldn't, to know that others who aren't survivors can witness these spaces, because something I've always said is we don't need an advert. If we could record a safe room, we could put a camera, like a fly on the wall, and anyone could see what happens in that space when survivors talk, we'd be fine. Forget the brochures. But that is a confidential space. To have people who are willing to talk and share and stand up on that pedestal, and to know that others can be in that space with them.
And we officially have had our first positive speaker. Positive speaker.
Well, you just can't steal everything from them.
No, I know. Darren will go mad. Darren's the chief exec at George House Trust.
Loud Voices, legally distinct project. Loud Voices.
Our Loud Voices have had our first event. So Christopher went down to London during our 16th year at the Act on ICSA, Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse.
Thank you for remembering that for me.
It had its 3rd anniversary of the original ICSA report, so Professor Alexis Jay's report coming out. Made 20 recommendations to the government, and successions of governments had not done anything about it. So there was this big event, and our first ever loud voice was heard, and it was tremendous.
Yeah.
And I think for me, 17, I want to hear more loud voices, George.
No, I think that's the challenge.
I want to hear your loud voice.
Yep.
I think people are sick of hearing my loud voice.
They'll be sick of mine soon enough, mate. Season 3. If we get to season 7, they'll be hung.
Good. And seeing more loud voices, we've got, I think the last count, I think we had something like 12 loud voices, 25 lived experience expert reference group members. We've got 7 volunteers, I think it is now. We're recruiting more. So we should have lots of
There's
voices.
a room for everyone. And that's the thing, is this Loud Voices community is a community. So all of the other Loud Voices, Duncan, myself, the rest of the team who've gotten involved with it, we're going to be there to support each other. That's our challenge, to make sure after we speak, we contain, we look after. How did it go? How was the venue? Were you taken care of? We'll pair people up. We'll find the right spaces for them. It's not exploitation. It's celebration.
Completely.
And no one's stepping up above the parapet to get shot. They're coming into the right environment to say the thing that everyone needs to hear but hasn't been ready to hear. And that will be a really important part of this 17th year for myself and for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, what happens then? Who knows?
We'll find out. You have to stay tuned.
Absolutely.
Duncan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We now come to our final segment, which is the letters segment. For this, I thought it appropriate to choose a piece from the I Wish You Knew project called 60 Seconds. We've been talking all about the passage of time. There's been a lot more than 60 seconds in the last year, but this is a piece about how 60 seconds can change someone's life, but then also how important each 60 seconds can be after that point. 60 seconds. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve to be here asking for help because it was only 60 seconds. 60 seconds of his weight on top of me when I didn't consent to it. 60 seconds where he kissed me when I didn't consent. 60 seconds where he touched me when I didn't consent. 60 seconds to decide I didn't have to accept what he was doing. 60 seconds to tear my mind back from the frozen state of horror this attack had locked me in. 60 seconds to decide that I have a choice. I remember engaging in consensual sex, and when I was touched intimately, that touch would go to the core of my being. It was thrilling and beautiful because I wanted it. I consented. When my attacker was on top of me, each touch brought horror and anguish as intense as sexual pleasure, because every touch, every kiss he forced on me was a violation of my will, my entire being. In the intimate moments, our wills and our bodies are not divisible. When he put his hand on my privates against my will, the horror of that touch went to the core of my being, and I shattered. Everything that makes me who I am shattered. And still, somehow, I managed to tell myself it was only 60 seconds. I don't deserve help because it was only 60 seconds. It shouldn't hurt so much. It was only 60 seconds. It was 60 seconds that pushed my cortisol so high I started losing muscle mass. When I upped my exercise regime to stop my muscles shrinking, patches of my skin turned necrotic. I had to stop working out for 3 months or risk the necroses spreading and rotting to death. It was 60 seconds that made me a stranger in my own body. It was 60 seconds that tore my life apart. I used to avoid sex because it felt like his hands. Now I avoid sex because it feels like nothing at all. 60 seconds to destroy my sexuality. This is 60 seconds that cannot be healed in a minute, or days, or even years. This is 60 seconds that has spurred a lifelong journey of healing. Now I take 60 seconds to breathe and be aware when everything feels like his touch again. 60 seconds to remember the pieces of me I reassembled. 60 seconds to remind myself of the shattered pieces I solidified once more, that I make myself whole. 60 seconds to remember the feel of throwing him off me. I have healed so much, reclaimed so much, and yet there is so much more for me to reclaim. I will survive him. I will learn to thrive. Sometimes I need 60 seconds to remember that I don't have to do this alone, to admit that I need help. 60 seconds to reassure myself I am worthy of help, that I am worthy of life, that I still deserve a future. 60 seconds to believe that I can. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us for this very special episode. Thank you for being part of our 17th year. Wherever you're listening from, you're welcome here. More episodes will come. Our space will not change. It will be yours, and you can contribute to it also.